One of the greatest misunderstandings in cultural history is that classical sculpture lacked colour.
It changes your complete perception of antiquity when you see or start to imagine sculptures in colour.
Classical artworks would have been a riot of colour.
We have colourful sculpture in Egypt. We have colourful sculpture in European medieval times. Why do we cut out Greek and Roman sculptures?
Some of the most influential artists and writers in history have either ignored or denied the truth about classical art's vibrancy.
So there's this constant marginalisation of colour, as if it's a bit of an embarrassment.
Could it be part of a wider attitude in Western culture to suppress the power of colour? Art historians and archaeologists have solid proof that ancient Greek and Roman artworks were brightly painted.
We know this is an archer. It might be the mythical Trojan prince Paris, and the pigments have been identified on the basis of scientific analysis of this piece and of the accompanying pieces in this ensemble.
Chroma, a new exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, explores our Technicolor heritage.
We think it's really important that audiences come to understand that the way they see ancient Greek and Roman sculpture isn't the way it was first created. And that's what we're offering in this exhibition, an ancient world that is suffuse in color, where vivid reds and yellows and gold and blues and greens are part of the fabric of a city and part of a fabric of a building and part of your environment.
Sometimes ancient sculptures were positioned high up on temples, and colour made them easier to see. It also added detail and visual razzmatazz to mythological stories. This is a reconstruction of a sphinx from around 530 BCE. Its original colouring has been painstakingly recreated by Professor Vincent Sprinkman and Dr. Ulrike Koch-Brinkmann, who have led research into ancient polychromy for the past 40 years. Working closely with the Met, the Brinkmans were able to reveal ancient colour designs using UV light.
These color materials made for nature are fading in different ways. So, for example, all the iron oxides, all the ochre earth are reacting with the marble and fading very quickly. On the other hand, cinnabar or azurite protected the surface of the marble, and this you can document with UV light.
Natural weathering is the leading thief of classical vibrancy. The Brinkmans acknowledge that their reconstructed sculptures come as a shock to most people, many of whom prefer the weathered, colour-drained versions.
I would like to call them those guardians of good taste. And those guardians of good taste, in a theoretical sense, intellectual people, they can't manage it. The clash is too hard. Their expectation is much too firm in order to give any space for a change of perspective.
For over 20 years, London-based artist David Batchelor has studied and written about how colour became a battleground in Western art theory, with the anti-colour camp often gaining the upper hand. It is a phenomenon which he calls chromophobia.
When I went to art school, which was in the 1970s, which was at the moment of conceptual art in particular, there was no colour. Not only did I not do any colour, I didn't notice that it wasn't being done. I began to read, and the more I read, the more I noticed this pattern of resistance to colour, this tendency to treat colour as other, as feminine, oriental, primitive, infantile or kitsch, or cosmetic. And that pattern was really striking. And it's there in Plato. Plato calls colour cosmetic. It's there in 20th century architecture. It's there in Joshua Reynolds and Kant, and even Goethe, who was a great colour theorist.
Of course, not every work of art in the Western tradition since antiquity has been completely burgled of colour, but a hierarchy of value in art theory, taught in official art schools, known as academies, placed the skills of disegno, that is, of drawing, much higher than mere colore, or colouring. As history unfolded, the distinction became harsher and more prejudiced.
So when Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo started to produce the concept, the notion, the idea of white marble, unpainted marble, they did it in opposition to the full color scheme of Christian art, of the art of the church. So it was a sign of getting liberated from the dogma of Christianity.
Greco-Roman society has shaped so much of our world, from our literature, architecture, and our values in politics, philosophy and law. Its monochromatism is heralded in artistic masterpieces of the Western canon, as well as iconic buildings harking back to the classical style, such as the White House and St Paul's Cathedral in London, which should, if they were authentic to their sources, be multicoloured. Returning vibrancy to the core of the Western cultural tradition will always be a controversial issue and testament to the power and hidden complexity of colour.
We don't have the words for colour. We can perceive about 10 million different gradations of colour, but we only have 11 basic colour terms. So there's an enormous asymmetry between what we can see out there around here and what we can say. And that's why it's so interesting.